Boogity, boogity, boogity. Let's go racing, boys, and let's go wrecking, boys.
Pick up the speed.
Especially when we get near the finish line. Let's go wrecking, boys. Let's go punting. Tell you what.
You get sent to the principal's office, you do that.
Austin Dillon, man, he's such a good punter. He could punt in the NFL the way he punted. Joey Logano. We welcome in Jeff Owens in the fast lane. Man, you got a lot to chew on tonight. Where do you want to start?
Whew, wow. It's been a busy week for sure. Yeah, I mean, you got to start with that incident last week and what Austin Dillon did. I mean, he forgot the old adage that rubbing's racing, and he turned it into wrecking and racing. And I mean, that was as blatant as any move I've seen. That was Earnhardt wrecking Labonte at Bristol in '99. I mean, he just flat ran over him to win the race. And unfortunately, he took out another guy to do it as well. And I think NASCAR, you guys know that I don't agree with a whole lot of what NASCAR does, and I've beat them up pretty bad on this show before sometimes. But I think they got this right. I think they had to do what they did, or they were going to turn this into some sort of Wild West free-for-all, and everybody who's desperate to win a race and make the playoffs is going to start doing that.
Yeah.
So I think they had to come down hard. They had to do this, and I think this was the right way to do it, is to take the playoff win away. And the most important part of this is that they set the precedent, and the drivers were begging them to do this. Where's the line? Can you can use the bump and run, or you can even wreck a guy, but you can't do what Austin Dillon did last week. And I think that's the message and the precedent that NASCAR set, and I think that was the right move.
Why is and I'm trying to remember the correct terminology, the right fender hook, is that what they call it?
Yeah, something like that.
Why is that so taboo in NASCAR?
Well, I think it turns the car at a much more extreme angle, nose first into the wall. That's why you can't do that. Now, you can wind up hitting the wall that way if you hit them on the opposite side as well. But if you hook them on the right side, you're going to turn them nose first right into the wall, and that's dangerous. But the problem NASCAR's got now is they've got to legislate this thing, and now they got to figure out, okay, where's the line? They've laid the line in the sand that you can't cross. But where's the rest of the line leading up to that? Can you still move a guy out of the way? We've seen them wreck people before. If you're racing for the win and you accidentally wreck a guy, that's okay, and I agree with that. But now they got a fine line that they got to legislate, and their next move will be critical because people will be watching. So they sort of opened up a can of worms here, but again, I think it had to be done.
In the fast lane with Jeff Owens here tonight on Sports Talk, looking back at the chaos at the end of the race this past weekend in Richmond. And Jeff, this may be a rare occasion that I actually disagree with you, and I'll explain in just a second. But first, do you think part of the problem was he wrecked two drivers? If he just knocks Logano out of the way and still wins the race, are we even talking about this today?
It makes it harder. Mm-hmm. It does make it harder, and I don't know. I don't know what they would have done. But the fact that he also hooked Denny, and that was a very dangerous wreck, and Hamlin actually got hurt in that. He hurt his shoulder. I think that made it much worse. So, yeah, I definitely think that was a factor. And then, beyond that, you go and look at the fact that, he kind of hit him square or hit him on the right side, and he was coming from so far. He clearly just didn't lift and just ran right over him. But, yeah, that raises an interesting question, But the circumstances around the wreck and the repercussions of it, it's got to be a factor, I'm sure the two most angry people there were Joe Gibbs and Roger Penske, who had wrecked race cars, and not only that, angry sponsors. I'm sure they were in NASCAR. I'm sure they were in the hauler right after the race and in their ear all week long. So there's a lot that goes into this, and it's been interesting. Interesting decision by them, and it's going to be really interesting going forward to see what they will now allow.
And, Jeff, the only disagreement I would have with your opinion is because the rule book seems to be somewhat vague, and they have told these drivers that the playoffs are the be-all, end-all, just like every other professional stick and ball sport. You got to get in the playoffs or you don't matter. Your sponsors have to have you in the playoffs. So you've got Austin Dillon sitting there, and he's saying, there's no other way I can get in. I've got to find a way to win this race, and this is my best opportunity. Taking away the playoff thing, shouldn't they have come out and said, look, if this if this happens again, now we know where the line is. You guys cannot do this. You want to fine him. You want to, take points away and whatever the case may be. But shouldn't they have had something in the rule book that expressly forbid this before they just jump on Austin Dillon and take away a playoff win, or playoff spot, knowing how important the playoffs are?
Yeah, no, very fair point. Absolutely a fair point. And I agree with you. I think NASCAR has actually got to be held, they got to be responsible for this, because you're right. They created this scenario. The playoffs create this atmosphere. And the desperation that a guy like Austin Dillon, the situation he's in, NASCAR created that. That's one of the flaws with these playoffs and the win to get in scenario. And you're right. There was no rule about this, and you heard the drivers immediately after it happened that NASCAR has got to do something. But Denny Hamlin said there is no rule. It's just a judgment call. And that's the problem with it. I agree with you. They do need to put some sort of rule in the rule book, or at least strengthen the language a little bit. But then even beyond that, it comes down to a judgment call, what's allowed and what's not allowed. But I agree with your point there. They absolutely, in my opinion, created this situation because of the playoff system and the way it's currently set up. And does that mean that needs to be looked at? I don't know. But it's definitely a big factor in this for sure.
Well, 3 races to go in the regular season: Michigan, Daytona, and then Darlington. You talk about payback, which is on everybody's mind. You got to figure they usually avoid the super high speedway tracks for that. So you probably point towards Darlington. And do you think Logano and Hamlin team up to get him? Is this going to be a 2-on-1 situation? Like, okay, you take him high, I take him low.
Payback's a Darlington stripe, Jeff.
But we're going to get him.
Well, I'll tell you, there's not a lot of love lost between Hamlin and Logano either. They've had their incidents before, and really it was kind of funny watching both of those two guys sit there and rip another guy for wrecking somebody to win a race.
Yeah.
Because they have both done that numerous times. Now, they were much smarter about it, and I don't think they did it the way Austin Dillon did it. But, they can't say that with a straight face either. So, I don't know. I would say they're going to calm down and probably not go after them and retaliate, because NASCAR is going to be watching for that.
Okay, my man. Hey, it's made for some great conversation this week on the NASCAR scene, no doubt about it. We'll look for a great race at Michigan. We thank you, and we'll talk to you next week.
Appreciate it, Jeff.
Okay, guys. Have a good one.
Jeff Owens in the fast lane coming up. George Bryan, birdies, bogeys, and biceps, brought to you by Tsunami Bar Sports.